In the last session, we talked about guilt trippers, and I asked you to identify if your guilt was internal, if you were guilt tripping yourself, or if you were dealing with an external guilt tripper, someone who has used sadness, helplessness, anger, or other emotional tricks to manipulate you into feeling guilty so that you will do what they want. So if guilt has been a factor in your life, and if you have ever done things that you didn't want to do just to keep the peace, or if you have sometimes chosen not to do things that were really important to you because you didn't want someone else to be disappointed or angry with you, then I hope you will agree that it's time to change your relationship with guilt so that you can stop feeling guilty when you haven't done anything wrong. Sound good? Yeah, great. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is change your emotional vocabulary. I want you to delete the word guilt and replace it with the word regret. So guilt feels like you've done something wrong. You have failed. You are a bad person. You feel awful and ashamed. Now, regret, on the other hand, is a feeling of sadness or disappointment about an unfortunate or unpleasant situation, and it's what we feel over a lost or missed opportunity. It does not imply personal responsibility. Rather, it's a feeling of wishing that things could be different. So, let's try a little experiment. See what happens when you delete the word guilt and replace it with the word regret. Ready? Okay, here we go. I regret that I often have negative feelings toward others. I regret that I sometimes lose my temper and I say things that I really wish I could take back. I regret that I'm okay and my care receiver isn't. I regret that I can't change, fix, or control their situation. I regret that I resent how much time it takes to meet their needs. I regret that my care receiver feels cheated or abandoned when I go do something for myself. I regret that I resent the amount of money it takes to provide for their care, and that I often think about how much something is going to cost before I think about how much or whether it will really benefit my care receiver. I regret that I get tired and I don't always have the energy I need to attend to their needs. And when I push myself beyond my limits, I regret that I resent them for needing so much. I regret that our relationship has changed and that my feelings toward my care receiver are not always loving. I regret that I don't enjoy our time together anymore. I regret that I'm always looking at my watch when I'm with them, and I'm always looking for excuses to get away. Because being with them just does not bring me any pleasure. I regret that it's hard to make conversation. And I regret that the situation has progressed to the point that I cannot do everything I thought I would be able to do. I'm really regretting that I made promises in the past that I cannot keep. I regret that I had to put my care receiver into long-term care. And I regret that they really hate it and desperately want to come home, and that I'm not willing or even capable of providing for all of their needs anymore. I regret that there are times when I wish they would just die and get it over with. I regret that I'm tired of being a caregiver and that I really want to go on and have a life of my own. Yikes, that's a big one, isn't it? And now, this is what I would like for you to think. I regret a lot of things, but you know what? I do not do guilt anymore. I'm done with guilt. So, how does that feel? It's pretty freeing, isn't it? I do think it's a relatively easy concept to understand, but to truly embrace it, you will need to practice it a lot. So what I'd like for you to do now is reflect back on the people and the situations that have caused you to feel guilty. And then I would like for you to reframe those events and the interactions by starting any guilt-related thoughts with the words, I regret, rather than I feel guilty about. And then going forward, when you think about doing something to take care of yourself, or when you ask somebody else to pitch in and help, or when you decide to say no to someone who wants you to do something for them, that's when I hope you will say, I regret that they aren't going to like this. I regret that this will be a problem for fill in the blank. But I refuse to feel guilty about it because I am not doing anything wrong. And once you decide to set yourself free from this cruel and controlling emotion, the next step will be developing an attitude of creative indifference toward your guilt trippers and toward their responses to you when you decide that you are not going to be manipulated any longer by this cruel and controlling emotion.